I want to ask you a question that I think many people will be wondering today, and that is, what is Vladimir Putin's end game? Does he want to force regime change in Ukraine? Will he occupy the country for a very long time? Does he want to create a vassal state next to Russia? Where do you think this all ends?
Thank you for having me. I think what we are witnessing today is a great tragedy. And Vladimir Putin is trying to shift the entire European security framework. And this is not just about Ukraine, and there is no assumption that he will stop at Ukraine. I think we have seen yesterday during his, this morning, in fact, during his televised statement that he has an ambition to fully digest Ukrainian sovereignty and Ukraine as a state. And in fact, he doesn't even recognize Ukraine as a state. And this has a long history. This hasn't started here. And we have seen open statements by Vladimir Putin that he doesn't regard Ukrainian sovereignty as a legitimate thing. So I think what he wants now is to punish Ukraine for its Western orientation, for its Western aspirations. And we have seen that since the annexation of Crimea, Ukrainian people have a consolidated stance towards their Western future. So, but at the same time, this is not just about a Western orientation and NATO enlargement. He has much bigger ambitions here. And I think the regime change is definitely one of his goals here.
You said a little while ago that there is no assumption here that Putin will stop in Ukraine. Is it your fear then that a NATO country could come under attack and therefore leading to an even wider European conflict?
At this point, I think the stakes are on the post-Soviet region, let's say, and non-NATO member countries are immediate targets in this case. And we have seen that in 2008, Vladimir Putin invaded Georgia. Then Ukraine was a next target, and now we see that his ambitions have grown. They have even grown since then. But at the same time, we have to remember that conventional warfare is not the only tool that Vladimir Putin has been using. And in fact, throughout many years, he has been targeting European states as well. And a couple of months ago, we have seen how the artificial migrant crisis has been used against Poland and Lithuania, and how Putin has used this momentum to create massive problems for the European Union states. So I think if Putin can get away with his aims in Ukraine, if he can fulfill his aims in Ukraine, European security will be massively threatened, and we will see further aggression from Russia's side.
And you talk about the possibility of regime change in Kiev. Do you think that Volodymyr Zelensky, the president, is likely to hold on for as long as he can, or may he step aside to avoid a more prolonged conflict?
At this point, I think there is no indication that he may step aside. If we look at his recent statements, he's motivating Ukrainian people to fight, and I'm sure that Ukrainian people will fight. At this point, I think that what Vladimir Zelensky needs to do, and he's been doing this for throughout these couple of months since this crisis has unfolded, is to have a close coordination with partners. And by that, I mean that sanctions must be applied immediately. We have seen that a number of European allies, and as well as the United States, of course, have already imposed some sanctions. But by far, these sanctions are not enough to deter Russia. And when we are talking about a full-scale Russian invasion, sanctions must be adequate to threats.
Will any sanctions be enough to act as a deterrent to Vladimir Putin? Because there are those who argue today that he has made a decision. He wants Ukraine as a vassal state, and he will go as far as he can until he gets that. No amount of sanctions will actually get in his way. What do you make of that?
Yes, I think I partially agree with the statement. I think with this statement, I think Vladimir Putin has made a decision about fully digesting Ukrainian sovereignty and erasing Ukrainian sovereignty. So now the question is whether the sanctions that the West will impose will be enough to stop Russia at this point. But in conjunction with sanctions, I think what the West should do is to keep arming Ukraine. And arming Ukraine can be deterrent in terms of not stopping Russia, but in terms of imposing higher costs for Russia in terms of the military invasion.
Just